evening, everybody. I would like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone here tonight. The committee has under considerations the estimates of the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2022. I would ask that we go around the room and have members introduce themselves for the record. My name is Layla Goodridge. I am the MLA for Fort McMurray-Lac-La-Biche and the chair of this committee, and I will be starting to my right.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Smith, and I'm the MLA for Drayton Valley, Devon.
Jackie Lovely, MLA for Camrose constituency.
Peter Guthrie, MLA for Airdrie Cochrane.
Kathleen Ganley, MLA, Calgary Mountain View.
Irfan Sabir, MLA for Calgary McCall.
Good evening, Nancy Robert, Clerk of Journals, and substituting for the committee clerk tonight.
Thank you. And now we'll go to members participating virtually. When I call your name, please introduce yourselves for the record. Shannon Phillips.
Shannon Phillips, MLA for Lethbridge West.
Mickey Amory.
Good evening, Mickey Amory, MLA, Calgary Cross.
Richard Godfried.
Good evening, Richard Godfried, MLA for Calgary Fish Creek.
Michaela Glasgow.
Michaela Glasgow, Brooks Medicine Hat.
Brad Rutherford.
Good evening, Brad Rutherford, MLA, Leduc Beaumont.
Thank you. Due to the current landscape we are in, all ministry staff and the minister will be participating in the estimates debate virtually. Minister, I would ask that you please introduce yourself and would ask if any one of your officials is called upon to respond to a question, that they can introduce themselves before speaking. I would like to note for the record the following substitutions: Ms. Phillips as Deputy Chair for MLA Laurie Sigurdsson and Mr. Guthrie for Mr. Newdorf. Minister, would you like to introduce yourself as well as your officials that are present with you?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Casey Madu, MLA for Edmonton South West and Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. I do have my officials in the room, but I think I would like to do that in the course of my opening remarks. Madam Chair, if that works for you.
That's up to you. Before we begin, I would like to note that in accordance with the recommendations from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, attendees at today's meeting are advised to leave the appropriate distance between themselves and other meeting participants. In addition, as indicated in the February 25th, 2021 memo from the Honourable Speaker Cooper, I would remind everyone of committee room protocols in line with health guidelines, which require members to wear masks in the committee rooms and while seated, except when speaking, at which time they may choose not to wear a face covering. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Please note that the microphones are operated by Hansard staff, and community proceedings are being live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and video stream and transcripts of meeting can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Those participating virtually are asked to turn on their camera while speaking and to please mute their microphone when not speaking. To be placed on the speakers list, virtual participants should email or send a message to the group chat to the committee clerk, and members in the room are asked to please wave or otherwise signal their intention to the chair. I would ask that everyone please set all of their cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of this meeting. Honourable members, the standing orders set out the process for consideration of the main estimates. A total of 3 hours has been scheduled for consideration of the estimates of the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General. Standing Order 59016 establishes the speaking order rotation and speaking times. In brief, the minister or a member of Executive Council acting on the minister's behalf will have 10 minutes to address the committee. At the conclusion of his comments, a 60-minute speaking block for the official opposition begins, followed by a 20-minute speaking block for independent members, if any, and then a 20-minute speaking block for the government caucus. Individuals may only speak for up to 10 minutes at a time, but time may be combined between the member and the minister. The rotation of speaking time will then follow the same rotation of the official opposition, independent members, and then government caucus, with individual speaking times set to 5 minutes for both the member and the ministry. These times may be combined, making it a 10-minute block. One final note. Please remember that at all times, all discussions should flow through the chair, regardless as to whether or not speaking times are combined. If members have any questions regarding speaking times or the rotation, please feel free to send an email or a message to the committee clerk about the process. With the concurrence of the committee, I will call a 5-minute break near the midpoint of the meeting. However, the 3-hour clock will continue to run. Is anyone opposed to having a break? Wonderful. We will work with the other group to have a break near the midpoint. Ministry officials, at the direction of the minister, may address the committee. Ministry officials are asked to please introduce themselves for the record prior to commenting. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit appropriately distanced at the table to assist their members. However, members have priority to sit at the table at all times. If debate is exhausted prior to the 3 hours, the ministry's estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the schedule, and the committee will adjourn. Points of order will be dealt with as they arise. However, the speaking block time and the overall 3-hour meeting clock will continue to run. Any written material provided in response to questions raised during the main estimate should be tabled by the minister in the assembly for the benefit of all members. And the vote on the estimates and any amendments will occur in Committee of Supply on March 17th, 2021. Amendments must be in writing and approved by Parliamentary Council prior to the meeting at which they are to be moved, and the original amendment is to be deposited with the committee clerk, and as a courtesy, an electronic version of the signed original should be provided to the committee clerk to be distributed for all committee members. I will now invite the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General to begin with his opening remarks. Minister, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here this evening. As you know, today I will be presenting Justice and Solicitor General 2021-2024 Business Plan and the 2021-2022 estimates. First, I would like to introduce the officials attending with me. My Deputy Minister for Justice, Frank Bosker, Associate Deputy Minister, Solicitor General, Dennis Cooley, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Services, Fiona Lavoie. Also with me today are Kim Goddard, Assistant Deputy Minister, Alberta Crown Prosecution Service, Kim Sanderson, Assistant Deputy Minister, Correctional Services, David Peace, Assistant Deputy Minister, Justice Services, Lisa Chair, Assistant Deputy Minister, Legal Services, Bill Sweeney, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Public Security, Mary MacDonald, Assistant Deputy Minister, Resolution and Court Administration Services, and Brad Walls, Senior Financial Officer. As we continue to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic challenges it presents, our government is focused on what matters most, protecting lives and livelihoods. For the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General, that means we need to continue to make sure Alberta's families and communities are safe and secure. I do want to thank my department for pivoting quickly in the face of this pandemic. COVID-19 presented significant challenges to our justice system, but it also presented an opportunity to deploy our modernization program that utilizes technology to accelerate Albertans' access to our justice system. With our partners in the justice system, we are moving forward modern, technology-driven solutions to the challenges facing our courts. This budget continues to focus on the core priorities of the court through these changes. We are investing in law enforcement, integrating services, and adopting new approaches to persistent challenges to provide the province with better outcomes and results. We are doing this because despite calls, including those from the opposition, to weaken law enforcement, we have heard from Albertans, and particularly minority communities, that strengthening enforcement is needed now more than ever. and we cannot allow philosophical issues to compromise efforts to protect Albertans and keep all of our communities safe. In this budget, we remain focused on fulfilling the promises that a record number of Albertans entrusted us with, including rural communities. Their concerns went unaddressed for far too long. This year, the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General's consolidated budget is $1.35 billion. Simply put, with Budget 2021, our ministry is providing much needed savings to taxpayers while delivering common sense reforms to the justice system that will make it work better for Albertans. Alberta's justice system must work for Albertans, especially when it comes to enforcement coverage and response times. All Albertans deserve access to timely and responsive police services no matter where they live. I see no reason why someone living in a rural community must wait significantly longer for police than someone living in Calgary, Edmonton, or Lethbridge. That's why we are maintaining or increasing enforcement funding across the board. Funding for organized and serious crime, including Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team, is increasing to $43.7 million. Total funding for Alberta RCMP is increasing, and we are looking forward to the Rapid Response Initiative coming into place this year, demonstrating our firm and continuing commitment to fighting rural crime. Provincial funding to municipalities for policing is holding steady. Of this budget, Chief of the Edmonton Police Services, Dale McPhee, noted as follows: police agencies across the province are evolving in ways well beyond their traditional roles, and we are pleased that the provincial government is maintaining its support as we continue to make advancements. Policing has become increasingly complex, and in a time of economic downturn, where demands on our front lines are rising, it is critical to ensure that the men and women who serve their communities have support and proper resources. We appreciate that the provincial government recognizes the importance of the investment in policing and law enforcement, end of quote. In total, we have committed more than $500 million to policing and enforcement activities this year. This is because we recognize the essential role law enforcement officers play in protecting our communities. We remain united in this purpose. In times such as this, we cannot afford to play politics with law enforcement. Albertans do not accept the rhetoric of ill-informed calls to defund the police. And as Justice Minister, I would not give any legitimacy to that kind of partisan activism. And we now know that governments that flirted with the idea of defund the police saw a spike in crime, disproportionately affecting minority communities. Budget 2021 is based on facts and evidence, not hashtags and fashionable trends in politics. Common sense is also guiding Justice and Solicitor General staffing to find savings in our corrections system. In our efforts to focus on the core services Albertans rely on, we are reviewing and determining the most suitable delivery of correctional services while reducing costs as inmate populations decline. That means increasing the use of technology to streamline administration and supervision to create efficiencies, internalizing some services that were once contracted out at an additional expense, such as youth community corrections in Calgary, and instead relying on our own qualified staff at the provincial government, finding and eliminating duplication wherever possible, taking strategic approaches to managing and filling vacancies, participating in group purchasing initiatives, and sharing contracts with other government branches to reduce cost, and analyzing the use of overtime within our correctional centers. Through these common sense efficiencies, the Corrections Department will find $24 million in much needed savings bringing its total budget to $263.2 million this year. Within our court system, we are focusing on core services and changing the way we do business to save taxpayer dollars as well. In our court, we strive to resolve matters in a timely manner. Pressures remain, but we won't wait for better fiscal times. So we are already pressing forward in several associated areas to find efficiencies. We have been working with Alberta Judiciary to modernize court services and operations, work that was sped up by the need to address the new pressures created by the COVID-19 pandemic, including court closures and social distancing requirements. Thankfully, staff and our partners were able to speed up this process and expand the use of remote court hearings earlier than expected, freeing up invaluable court space and time. The fast and fair Safe Roads Alberta system represents a significant modernization effort, and I must thank both the Minister of Transportation and his officials for their collaboration on this important reform. With Safe Roads, the penalties for impaired driving are tougher while allowing us to prioritize serious matters and make better use of existing court resources. In this way, we continue to strive to keep our streets safe while enhancing access to justice by prioritizing essential matters before the court. And we are also using technology and process changes to make similar improvement in other areas of the justice system. Services around traffic ticket, adjournment, filings, and virtual court are getting more user-friendly and efficient thanks to the increased use of technology and process updates. The savings from practical changes like this start to add up quickly when we look at the big picture. So we will be continuing down this road in 2021. I am excited to discuss more about the Justice Digital initiative and some
Minister, I'll let you
exciting
finish
growth
your
in 2021.
sentence.
Madam Chair, I yield back to you.
With that, we will now move to the official opposition. Mr. Sabir? Yeah. All right, Mr. Sabir will be opening up the first 20-minute block. For the hour that follows, members of the official opposition and the minister may speak. The timer will be set for 20-minute intervals so that you are aware of time. Are you guys, minister or member, are you interested in sharing time or doing block time?
Yes, if that's what minister agrees to.
Yes, I am comfortable with that, Madam Chair.
Fantastic. Then the first block is yours, Mr. Sabir.
And thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. I do have some opening remarks, brief opening remarks, and it's my pleasure to be here to discuss Justice and Solicitor budget. And thank you to the Minister and all your staff for being here to discuss this budget. The work of the Justice Department has always been of critical importance. The functioning of our society and democracy depends on the rule of law and a fair, impartial, and efficient justice system. In recent times, it has become more important than ever before to have an efficient justice system that is responsive to the needs of diverse communities in Alberta. Murder of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter movement protest that followed, then arrest of Chief Alan Adam, Chief of Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, overrepresentation of Indigenous and Black people in justice system, and the recent attacks on Black women, Black Muslim hijab-wearing women, have all led to renewed calls for addressing systemic racism issues and concerns raised by Black, Indigenous, and person of color communities, respecting their interaction with the justice system. I recognize, Minister, that we may disagree on many policy issues, but we all share a common belief that all Albertans should be able to feel safe in their homes and communities, and we also agree that all Albertans should be governed by the rule of law and must have an equal access to justice. Through this exchange today, my hope is to have an honest and respectful conversation that will help Albertans understand your budget, your vision, in the work you're doing to advance our interests and address challenges facing us as Albertans. I understand that you may not have all the information that I may seek, so if you provide an undertaking to provide an answer later, I would expect any such undertaking will be dealt prior to the vote of the budget in the legislature. I will try my best to keep my questions brief, and I hope that you would do the same. With that, I will get into the first question. I think by the end of your remarks, you are getting into digital justice, and you reference in the fiscal plan a number of times, for example, on page 120, about the digitalization of courts and the justice system, and those changes being responsible for the majority of reductions in your budget this year. My understanding is that this initiative started several years ago, and criminal e-filing was well underway in 2018. So, Minister, the question I have is that this year you attribute $65 million, that's the total reduction in justice budget, in newly found savings to this initiative. Can you or officials walk us through what are those savings that you identified this year, which were not planned in last year's budget? And as I said, it's my understanding that this initiative started before you, and I just want to know how the saving or the expected saving have developed since 2018, like what was forecasted at the time versus what was saved in later years, including this year.
Thank you, Amelie Saber, for your question. So Budget 2021 provides savings to taxpayers while delivering common sense reform to the justice system. We are protecting the programs and services that Albertans rely on to keep them safe. While previous government neglected the justice system, we are taking transformative steps to modernize it for today's Alberta. Hence, the effort with respect to Justice Digital. Other initiatives include reforming, obviously, the Police Act, banning the practice of carding and regulating street checks, fighting war or crime, and reducing response times for Albertans in distress through rapid response, appointing the Alberta Parole Board, updating laws to protect citizens and the economy from emerging criminal trends. But specifically to your question, through modernization and efficiencies, Alberta's government is saving taxpayers dollars whilst protecting citizens. Key to Alberta's safety is policing, which is why we are maintaining or increasing enforcement funding in several areas. While we will continue to focus on better use of technology and updating processes to modernize services, for example, we are working with the judiciary to modernize court services and operations, some of which was already demonstrated and sped up by our collective effort to address the pandemic, as you rightly noted, such as expanding the use of remote court hearings. We are continuing to support changes to impaired driving enforcement and consequences which are designed to keep our streets safer and not tie up police, prosecutors, and judges in courtrooms. Under the simple, fast, and safe road Alberta system, penalties for impaired driving got tougher, while we prioritized matters and helped our police and court focus on the most serious matters facing Albertans. Finally, I would say this, Member Sabir, that we are also using technology and process changes to make the justice system more user-friendly and efficient, such as the areas of traffic tickets, adjournment, filings, and virtual court. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Minister. Well, that doesn't help me understand where we found $65 million in reduction.
Here, I'll just remind you, all the questions must go through the chair.
You asked me to speak and I started.
Yes,
You
and
recognized me and then I started.
I
talking.
understand, but your question has to go through the chair and not directly to the minister.
Okay, through you, Chair. That answer didn't help me understand how $65 million were saved in justice budget, but I will move on to estimates and I will come back to this digitalization later. With respect to line item 3.1 through the chair, Minister, we now have seen a reduction of 16.5 million over 2 years. And my understanding is that these reductions result from the reduction of full-time employees and lawyers inside the department and outsourcing more legal work. In 2019, government plan was publicly shared, was to reduce it by 90. So the question I have is how many have been reduced to date and how many you intend to reduce in this budget since there are reductions of $16.5 million in 2 years.
To the Minister.
Thank you, Chair, for that question. So since 2019-2020 fiscal year, the Legal Services Division has been advancing a strategy which combines manpower reductions with a service innovation and a focus on providing those services of greatest value to our client. We work with our client to assess the nature of the services they require and ensure the work requires the specialized skills, knowledge, or experience of a lawyer. If the request does not require specialized legal skills or is of low priority or risk, we will assist our client in developing capacity to manage the matter through activities such as developing templates, tips, tip sheets, flowcharts, and other resources. But let me also say this, that the impact of that on the Legal Services Division needs to ensure we are focusing on our legal resources and specialized legal skills on those matters that require a lawyer. The Legal Services Division uses internal processes to rigorously monitor an ongoing service request and assign resources to items of high priority to our client. But specific to your question as well, this was done through a combination of issuing work notices to staff and attrition. All of the bargaining unit positions identified in 2020-2021 were lost through attrition. The last working notice should be complete in December 2021. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sabir?
And through you, Madam Chair, so will there be any reductions in number of lawyers in your department this year, by the end of this year?
Minister?
Thank you, Chair. So for 2021-2022, the lawyers that will be affected at the management level is 10, 0 for opted out. Bargaining unit will be 2, for a total of 2020-2021, 54, and for 2021-2022, 12.
Mr. Sabir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for my understanding, it's stated in your explanatory note for this line item that your department provides legal services to other ministries under this line item. So with these reductions, it's significant, $16.5 million. Are other departments now outsourcing more legal work more often? And how is that handled? Are you still responsible for providing legal services to other departments?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. And I'll just remind you again to make sure that you're directing your questions through the chair. Minister Madu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the department still provide legal services to other departments. There are circumstances in which we utilize outside counsel. And so when the Legal Services Division lacks capacity or subject matter expertise, we retain external counsel in the marketplace with the cost paid by client departments. We endeavor to retain counsel at rates set out in the Government of Alberta tariff that has not increased since 2009. When that is not possible, we negotiate the best rate possible. Above tariff rates have to be approved by senior justice and Solicitor General officials and the client ministry. So the top end Government of Alberta tariff set in 2009 is $250 per hour. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, to you, Chair. So do you have some cross-government dollar figure on how much was spent on external legal opinion, and did that amount differ from previous years? And where do those expenses show up, like in each department's budget or within the justice budget?
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Well, data for the current fiscal year is not yet available, but I can confirm the following. The amount of money spent on outside counsel for the last two complete fiscal years are as follows: 2018, 2019, $21 million, roughly about $21 million. 2019, 2020, $26 million.
We're having some technical challenges. Yes, no, but it froze. Mr. Sabir.
To you, Chair. So, Minister, is there a list of firms that have work outsourced to them? And is there anywhere that we can know which firm is acting on what file? Have you had to make any policy changes, such as the amount that can be billed, sole sourcing, those kind of rules?
Thank you, and to Minister Madhu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you can see from the tariff that was set up in 2009, that has not changed. The lawyers that department or my ministry retains comes from a wide variety of background. I think in the end, it depends on the nature of the legal work and the expertise that is being looked for. So, and those are matters that are reported with the Auditor General, and they can easily be found. Let me also say this, that we do as much legal work as we can using our highly efficient and economical in-house counsel in Legal Services Division. When we do have to use outside counsel, let me be clear again, we endeavor to retain counsel at rates set out in the Government of Alberta tariff. And as I said before, that hasn't changed since 2009. So again, you can find all of this information on government open source website for sole source contract. All of that is readily available, Member Sabir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And Mr. Sabir, I just remind you that your questions must be directed through the chair. And so one of the better ways of doing that is to not ask the question directly to the minister. And so asking it through the chair.
Madam Chair, every time I've been directing it through you, I don't know what else you want me to do to make sure the end of the day question is going to the minister, like I said, through you to the minister. So you want me to repeat that every time when I say?
Yes. I would like you to be directing your questions through the chair.
While we are in this category, line item 3.3, law reforms will this year only be fifth of what it was last year. So, question through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister. Can you walk us through what kind of projects will not proceed because of that reduction? And can you provide us a list? Will there be less employees because of this reduction?
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, there are going to be some changes, and this is not new to Justice and Solicitor General. At Justice, we have approximately 6,777 employees. And as a consequence of Budget 2021-2022, and based on the direction from Treasury Board and Finance, you are going to see at the most 71 or 77 staffs being impacted. But I am confident that many of these positions, as I said before, are going to be through attrition and the working notices that were issued in 2019, 2020. Sorry, 2019, 2020.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Sabir?
So I have some question now relating to business plan. Page 71 states, Justice and Solicitor General helps ensure that all Albertans can live in safe and resilient communities while having access to a fair and innovative justice system. It ensures the rule of law is upheld and government undertakings are administered according to the law. So through you to Minister, I know this is on the mind of many Albertans. 6 Black Muslim hijab-wearing women were attacked in last little while here in Edmonton. And pretty much every weekend, a bunch of racists carrying tiki torches are flouting Alberta's lawful public health restrictions here in Edmonton and Calgary. I just want to ask some question on behalf of those who are victim of all this, and I am hoping to see where it's reflected in your business plan. For example, the key objective in Outcome 1 and Outcome 3 talk about many important issues but speak little to these issues. Can you tell us how this important work fits into your business plan this year? And could you assure Albertan that this work will be a priority?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we condemn acts of racism and discrimination and hate crimes against minority communities. I'm sure the member would agree that anytime someone out there is victimized on the basis of who they are or what they look like or the color of their skin, as a society, we can all agree that we should never tolerate those type of behavior, and we should all rise to condemn.
Minister, I'll let you continue. That was just the first of our 20-minute blocks.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we can all agree to condemn those type of actions and do everything we can to ensure that we root out those who seek to do our citizens harm on the basis of what they look like. But societal expectations with respect to proactive policing of hate and bias-motivated crime and crime extremism are growing. No question about that. We are considering the establishment of a Justice and Solicitor General-based hate crimes task force to enhance intelligence, training, specialized investigative support, and interagency coordination to reduce and respond to hate, bias-motivated crimes and incidents throughout Alberta. And I am confident that we would have more to say on this particular issue in the weeks and months to come.
Thank you, Minister. And to Mr. Sabir.
To you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification question, Minister. You have mentioned the word minority communities a few times now, just to be on the same page and help understand your answer better. Can you explain what do you mean when you use minority communities?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. To the Minister.
Well, by minority communities, I am referring to individuals who come from minority communities. Black, Indigenous, other persons of color, LGBTQ plus members of our society. All of those people who have been on the margins of our society, who due to either their religion or the color of their skin or their sexual orientation are being victimized. I think that will come under the umbrella of folks from minority communities.
Thank you, Minister. To Mr. Severe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Given that it's top of mind for many Albertans, and under line item 8.2, we see that there is no contribution to the assistance to the Human Right Education and Multiculturalism Fund, same as last year. And on the website of Alberta Human Rights Commission, it appears that the fund and its programming are discontinued. And through you, Chair, Minister, can you explain if that work is done in a different way and if there is anything else that changed, because I'm not able to find the support for these initiatives in your budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. Again, just a reminder to direct your questions through the chair, not directly to the minister, and minister for a response.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. The Alberta Human Rights Commission and the work that they do is one that is extremely important in making sure that we treat all of our citizens fairly, and that there is mechanism, to for citizens to seek remedy when their human rights have been violated. So that work is important to me as Minister of Justice, and I have been working closely with the leaders of the Alberta Human Rights Commission to make sure that they understand that that is important work. That said, Assistance to Human Rights and Education and Multiculturalism Fund provided financial resources for programs and services that promoted diversity and equality, prevent discrimination and racism, and build welcoming communities and workplaces. The goal of this program was to support the full civic participation of all Albertans in the social, cultural, political, and economic life of the province without encountering discrimination because of their race, religion, beliefs, color, gender, disability, age, ancestry, sexual orientation, or other characteristics protected in the Alberta Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Education and Multiculturalism Fund was funded by the Department, Alberta Lottery Fund. In 2019-2020, it was identified to be dissolved once the $30 million surplus in the fund was exhausted. The fund no longer receives revenue from the department or the lottery fund. That said, the work of human rights education continues with the Human Rights Commission. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. To Mr. Sabir.
And thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I think it's widely believed that education is one of the best ways to address racism. And as you indicated, that there is $0 allocated to address racism and systemic racism issues. So a question I have is that, is there any funds for that kind of initiatives anywhere in your ministry's budget? Through you, Chair, can you, Minister, help me understand where I can find support for those initiatives around racism and systemic racism?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a budgetary allocation for the Alberta Human Rights Commission that helps them do the important work of meeting their mandate, the mandate of the Commission. And that includes, making sure that a complaint of discrimination and racism to the Commission are heard. A part of that mandate also continues to be education and dealing with racism wherever it occurs. My department, the Department of Justice, also have a wide variety of programs and services aimed at dealing with racism and discrimination. We also provide funds to municipal police services and all kinds of grants that helps them also deal with issues like that. But that is also why in Bill 38, the Justice Status Amendment Act, there was a provision for new fund that will go to community services and agencies that are focused on community work in providing equal opportunities and tackling crimes before they occur, or helping us root out the root causes of crime. But overall, communities and agencies out there can make application to the department through the establishment of that particular fund for all kinds of community effort that includes fighting racism and discrimination in our communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Business Plan, page 71. The Ministry continues to work to ensure matter progress through the justice system within the time frame established by the Supreme Court of Canada in Jordan decision. Through you, Madam Chair, I have a question for Minister. Can you please speak about the status of delays relating to Jordan decision, if any, in criminal courts?
Thank you. And to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as a consequence of the Jordan decision, there is a requirement to ensure that matters impacted by the Jordan decision are heard within the period of 18 months. And we are working with our partners in the judiciary, to make sure that matters are heard within the time frame, required by the Jordan, decision. That said, 306 Jordan applications have been filed in Alberta courts between October 25, 2016 and December 31st, 2020. 9 pending, 94 dismissed by the court, 36 granted, 2 being appealed by the Crown, 56 abandoned by the defense, 45 proactively stayed by the Crown. On the basis they wouldn't survive a Jordan application, 66 resolved unrelated to Jordan application. Over that time period, more than 477,000 cases entered the system, which means that about 0.008% of matters have been resulted in a successful Jordan application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you. So there used to be a performance indicator on Jordan application. I don't see it in business plan anymore. But through you, Madam Chair, question for Minister I have is that did Minister perform any analysis how the number might develop going forward?
Thank you. And to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, the court and my department are tracking those applications to make sure that they are within the time frame allowed by the court. We are keeping a close eye on that, and we are working with all kinds of partners within the justice system, including legal aid, to make sure that cases that are coming before the court that may have impacted the Jordan decisions, are being resolved, on time. So, but we do not know, what the impact on that application will be as a consequence of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. To Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To you, we are seeing line item 2.4 and 2.5. That's funds for Provincial Court and Alberta Court of Queen's Bench. We are seeing reduction for both. So the simple question I have through you, Madam Chair, for Minister, that have you done any analysis how these reductions will play out and will it impact court backlogs?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. To Minister Madu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have worked closely with the leaders of the judiciary to make sure that the budget that we put forward for the court it's something that they are able to manage. We have tried so hard to minimize, to ensure that the budget would not impact, frontline justice services. So, I mean, I am confident that the work that we continue to do with the court continues to focus on better use of technology and updating processes to modernize services. For example, we are working with the judiciary to modernize court services and operations, and some of which was already demonstrated and sped up by our collective effort to address the pandemic, such as expanding the use of remote court hearings. We are continuing to support changes to impaired driving enforcement and consequences, which is designed to keep our streets safer and not tie up police, prosecutors, and judges in courtrooms. At the end of the day, I am confident that the court budgets have been, put forward in a way that ensures that they continue to deliver, the services that Albertans expect without any significant impact on their ability to deliver for Albertans.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you. Page 73, Outcome 1. The Ministry is committed to ensuring all Albertans feel safe, secure, and protected in their communities, no matter where they live within the province. So through you, Madam Chair, question for Minister. Minister, the budget lists 3 key objectives, which include feasibility study for provincial police force, includes provincial police force, among other things. So the question I have, or what I really want to understand, that how these objectives help a black Muslim hijab-wearing woman getting attacked in Edmonton or someone getting surveilled unlawfully by the police feel safe and secure in their homes and communities.
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Ministry is working with policing partners and stakeholders to ensure all Albertans feel safe and secure and protected in their communities, and that includes efforts from minority communities. Government efforts in this regard include commitment of up to $10 million each fiscal year to improve law enforcement's rural crime response capability by increasing RCMP resources and creating the Rural Alberta Provincial Integrated Defense Response, which will allow provincial peace officers to better respond and assist the RCMP and other police services in rural Alberta. We are committing up to $43.7 million to deal with and investigate child pornography, gang violence, drug trafficking, stalking, domestic violence, primarily through the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team. We continue to work with partners and use evidence-based principles to assess the risk of those involved with community corrections through sustainment of effective practices in community policing. I am confident, that the budget that we have put forward will ensure that we keep all of our communities and people safe. And there are all kinds of initiatives on that municipal policing, crime prevention and restorative justice unit. All of that particular work is undergoing. As Justice Minister, I am committed in making sure that all Albertans, regardless of where they live in this province, feel safe in their homes and in their communities.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Sabir.
And thank you, Chair. And through you to the Minister. Page 71 of the business plan says the Ministry supports, educates and trains police commissions and police committees. And on page 72, it's stated that Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General continues to review program to ensure efficient and client-focused services. I recognize it's a pretty important function through Chair to you, Minister, that given the concerns about systemic racism and surveillance, unlawful surveillance by the police, can you confirm that if you're reviewing police education and training, basically I just want if you could confirm it.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. Again, a reminder to try and direct questions, but to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, let me be clear that as Justice Minister, I would, do everything within my powers to ensure that everyone, feels safe in our province. I have also said that the law enforcement community have got my full support. That said, I also said that we would hold them to account when they abuse the extraordinary power that they exercise and wield on Albertans. And that includes making sure that we review the Police Act. In fact, that is why we have embarked on the largest review of the Police Act since 1988. And we have brought together a wide range of Albertans from all walks of life, to provide us with their views, their expectations on what a modern police act would look like. We've heard complaints around the issues around the complaint resolution process. We've heard complaints around the interaction between law enforcement and citizens, and we've heard that racism and discrimination is real. And so I am committed in making sure that we resolve all of this. And that is why, Member Sabir, that I was proud in 2020 to ban the practice of carding. And, something that minority communities have been calling for years, for decades. And finally, this government was able to bring to an end a practice that unfairly discriminated against minority communities. That is also why in Bill 38, the Justice Status Amendment Act, that we amended the Police Act to include, for the first time in our police history, First Nation policing and police service and commission. And, so that is why I also have appointed a cultural person to help the department in the review of the Police Act with background in criminology and sociology. So I want to make sure that, our Police Act reflects today's Alberta, that our justice system reflects today's Alberta, that everyone who calls this province home can feel safe and respected in this province. And so, because unless we do that, then it will be difficult, for folks to be able to have faith and trust in law enforcement. And we can't afford to compromise that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Sabir.
So
just
you
to let
made
you know, we're just at the end of our last 20-minute block. Second of the three.
To you, Madam Chair, just a point of clarification for the Minister. I have read the paper that was released about carding and street checks, and I have read it a few times, and where it says that carding was and continues to remain illegal, and police authorities are directed to make policies and procedure with respect to street checks. So I represent a constituency which has people of color communities, and for those who just look like me, the question through you for the Minister is that help me understand in simplest term, what's different after your policy for a person like me when they go out?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. Minister Madu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me, through you, assure the member that the practice of carding, which is a practice that arbitrarily, that allows the police to arbitrarily stop people on the street on the basis of what they look like, has come to an end in Alberta. We ended that in November 2020. There is a distinction in practice and in law between street checks and carding. We also embarked on the reform of police checks. The law enforcement, and I'm sure Mr. Sabir will agree with me, must continue to have the ability to gather intelligence to help us disrupt violent crimes, to keep our people safe in our communities. To do that, there has to be a legal way, a legal means by which police is able to have interactions with members of the community. And so that is why we formed the street checks, and I committed to bringing forward legislation that would put parameters around when law enforcement can use the practice of street checks. So to be clear, and to all for all folks from the minority community who are watching tonight or who are listening, there are distinctions between carding and street checking. What I have heard long before I got elected from my own community, is that they were concerned with carding. They were not concerned about the potential for law enforcement to have legal interactions with them. It is law enforcement, those officers who embark on a practice whereby, without any lawful purpose, stops them on the street simply because of what they look like or the color of their skin. Those are the issues. We have ended that and put a requirement on the use of street checks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister, to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I think what I'm hearing from the community is more the same, but I will leave that for another day and move on to page 73, outcome 2, a fair and effective justice system. Key objectives talk about red tape, recall legislation, and UCP fair deal panel. Under key objective 1.3, the feasibility of provincial police force. In the quantitative portion of fair deal panel report, page 65, only 35% of Albertans thought that it would be helpful. So, a couple of short questions. I know many Albertans are interested in seeing that report, and it's due on April 30. And through you, Madam Chair, to Minister, will that report be made public? And I would appreciate if you can keep your answer brief.
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The member is correct that we are expecting the Provincial Police Transition Study report by April. I am not, going to here delve into a report that I don't have. I have not received the report yet, but I think it suffices to say that Albertans will be informed of that particular report, and I think it's important that we hear from Albertans who want the presence of law enforcement in their communities. That was an important commitment, a recommendation coming out of the Fair Deal panel. The former Justice Minister embarked on a tour of rural Alberta, where there were hundreds and hundreds of fellow citizens who trooped out, to tell him how important it is for them to be able to feel the presence of law enforcement. At the end of the day, the whole essence of the Provincial Police Transition Study is focused on community policing. And I want to make sure that it doesn't matter where you live in our province, that you are going to feel and see the presence of law enforcement in your communities. And let me also be clear that this is a matter of the safety of our people and of our communities. And I am not going to allow petty politics or the views of those who've got municipal police services. Whilst we will take into consideration the views of all Albertans, I also want to make sure that we do the right thing in making sure that we protect all Albertans. Madam Chair, in Edmonton, you could call 911, and within the matter of minutes, you get the police at your beck and call. You do the same thing in Calgary, in Lethbridge, in Camrose, in Medicine Hat. But if you live in rural Alberta, sometimes it takes 2 hours. And so the idea that we would not do everything we can to fix that, sometimes it is a phone call to the police. It oftentimes can be a matter of life and death. And rural crimes have gone up. The complaints about rural crime have gone up. And so it is important that government, regardless of the views of some, to do the right thing. Safety is a concern to all Albertans. And so at the end of the day, I am going to take into consideration the views of those who are mostly impacted by this particular issue in making recommendations to the government. But at this point in time, I am looking forward to the report, and at the appropriate time, I think that we will share the report with Albertans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Chair. I hope that report gets shared sooner than later. Page 74, Outcome 3, Key Objective 3.1, talks about a new model of victim service delivery. And I understand that government is setting up a panel to make recommendation on this. And Madam Chair, my colleagues and I are hearing from constituents, from victims of crime, about the delays and them getting denied services. So the question I have for Minister through you is that how long victims of crimes will have to wait before they can see a new model? I just need some specific timelines.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. To Minister Madhu.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Victims deserve to have the help that they need when they need it, and we are working to make sure this continues to happen in Alberta. We heard firsthand that changes were needed because the previous financial benefit program could take too long to access and didn't always provide enough urgent assistance for those coping with trauma. This is why we worked with stakeholders to make more timely support available to victims. We have also engaged with stakeholders, including victims and victim-serving organizations, to help us develop a new victims assistance program as part of a new approach to support victims of crime in Alberta, which we will be launching this year. As part of this particular work, we will also be looking at how to potentially direct more funding to assist victims. Let me also say this, Madam Chair, that I think that it is important when we're talking about victims of crime, that we also talk about the root causes of crime, the reason why they are victims in the first place. And I don't want us to lose sight that there is no greater responsibility of any government than to keep their people safe. And if there is any investment that we can make with respect to public safety initiatives to prevent fellow Albertans from being victims of crime, I think that is the right thing to do. And oftentimes, I know that we tend to focus on money. And there are problems that money is going to solve for us. Those of our citizens who have fallen victims of crime need the care that they deserve. They need the assistance to overcome the trauma and to overcome the difficulties that they are going through because of folks who have committed crimes against them. But I am also heavily invested in making sure that we do everything we can to see if we can prevent those crimes before they occur. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. To Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just a follow-up question. So is there a timeline for this new model? When can victims of crimes expect it to be in place?
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. To Minister Madhu.
Madam Chair, I am going to defer that question to my associate deputy minister responsible for Solicitor General to address the question. Go ahead, and please introduce yourself.
Dennis Cooley, Associate Deputy Minister, Justice Solicitor General. So that work that the Minister was referring to, the Victims of Services Review, is ongoing now. We hope to have the work completed over the course of the spring and into the summer, and then bringing that forward for cabinet decision making following the completion. Thank you.
To Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Estimates resolution services, line item 2.1. How many employees are there under line item 1 through you, Madam Chair, to Minister?
Thank you, Minister Madu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to defer that question to my Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for Resolution and Court Services, Mary McDonald. Mary, please introduce yourself.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chair. Mary McDonald, Assistant Deputy Minister, Resolution and Court Administration Services. And to answer the question in terms of the number of staff in resolution services, is based on about 90 staff there, depending on the number of vacancies at any given time.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Sabir?
To you, Madam Chair, just a follow-up. There are more than 2 million cuts in line 2.1. Will there be any reduction in that staff?
Mr. Madu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we are working with the judiciary to modernize court services and operations, some of which was already demonstrated and sped up by our collective effort in response to the pandemic. As I said before, there is going to be a total of 71 or 77 staff that will be impacted by the budget that has been put forward by the department, and that number will cut across the various divisions within Justice and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Sabir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Line 2.2, resolution services. They're cut from 11.9 million to 4.9 million. Can Minister or staff, through you, Madam Chair, walk us through what services will look different? Will there be any change in services? Will all services stay the same?
Thank you. To Minister Madu.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the court continues to focus on better use of technology and updating processes to modernize services. As I said in my opening remarks, frontline staff, frontline services will not be impacted. We are working with the judiciary to modernize court services and operations, some of which was already demonstrated and sped up by our collective effort to address the pandemic. We are continuing to support changes to impaired driving enforcement and consequences, which is designed to keep our streets safe. So at the end of the day, I am confident that, whilst we are going to see a reduction in the number of staff, mostly through attrition and working notices that were given in 2019-2020, the services that the division provides or the court provides, I am confident that those will not be impacted, and Albertans will continue to have the same level of service that they have become used to from the court.
Mr. Sphere?
To you, Madam Chair, glad to hear that no service will be impacted in line 2.2. To you, Madam Chair, yesterday, Child and Youth Advocate Del Graff issued a statement of concern yesterday, and it was mostly about impact of conflict and custody dispute on kids. And he's calling on government of Alberta, with the leadership of Minister of Justice and Solicitor General and support from child serving ministries, to make sure that formal and informal sports are readily available to families in high custody disputes. And at the same time, we are seeing a reduction of 7 million in court resolution services when Child and Youth Advocate is asking more. Again, through you, Madam Chair, Minister, can you assure Albertans that those services that are recommended by Child and Youth Advocate will be available to the families if they wish to seek those services?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Madam Chair, thank you for that question, and also to the member. As I said before, the budget that we have put forward is a budget that pays very close attention to making sure that we preserve the same level of service, if not more, that Albertans have come to rely. We are making transformational changes and to make our system and our court more efficient, and that is a good thing. And if we achieve savings, which is the goal here, that also is a good thing. As I said before, it is important that we continue to make investment, to provide efficient services and to make sure that there are no reductions in the level of services. It is not all the times that means that a reduction in budget necessarily means that there is going to be a reduction in the quality or level of service. As we have shown in justice, we are taking advantage of innovation in technology, in science, to deliver more efficient services. But that said, we take the concerns of the child and youth advocate very seriously. And I thank him for highlighting the needs of families involved in high conflict separation. My department, will fully review the statement of concern. And as you know, Madam Chair and member, this was released yesterday. We are now going to study that particular report and to make sure that we better understand what is needed to be done. But I can assure the member that my department is committed in making changes where required to ensure that families are protected and families and children who are going through high conflict matters in our court system are provided the support that they need. So we would connect with that particular office to better understand what is required. If we need to work with several ministries like Children's Services, Community and Social Services, to ensure that we put forward solutions to this particular problem, you can be rest assured that we will do.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Spear.
To you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification question from Minister. That line 2.2 reduction is a fair bit on a $12 million budget. It's a $7 million reduction. So, Minister, to Madam Chair, to you, is there any initiative that would categorize as digitalization or modernization and that you can attribute these reductions to?
Thank you. Mr. Madu, and you have 32 seconds to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution Services budget changes reflect efficiencies to be achieved through automation and digitization, realignment of resources to core frontline services and government labor mandate. I am confident that the resolution services. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister, you can finish your sentence very briefly.
So, Madam Chair, I am confident that the budget that we have put forward for resolution court services would allow them, to meet the demands of their division, the demand of the ministry's goal, whilst at the same time taking advantage of innovations in technology and modern ways of doing things in the 21st century. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we conclude the first portion of questions and go on to, we move on to Government Caucus for 20 minutes of questions from members. And I believe we are going to Mr. Amory.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister and to his officials for coming here this evening and allowing us to review these estimates and for those in attendance and watching. I was particularly happy that the Minister took the opportunity to address the committee about the steps that were taken in his short tenure as Justice Minister, including his responses to the racially motivated attack, which I have a personal connection to, and were something that the minister and I have discussed extensively. Working on the issues of carding was very important, and banning carding and initiating the comprehensive review of the Police Act was incredibly important and a timely move by this Justice Minister. The review of the Police Act is very important in my view because it is an act that has not been reviewed in any great detail or scope for decades. I'm confident that this review is absolutely essential, Madam Chair, to ensuring that it meets the needs of a very different society today than the one that it was originally drafted for. And when we look at the Police Act and we note that it hasn't been really looked at in decades, and we know that the changes in society have become so different from what we experienced when the Police Act was originally enacted. I think it's an important move and an essential one at that. It's also particularly encouraging, Madam Chair, and I want to highlight this because the Minister and I have had a significant amount of conversations about this, but it's important and encouraging to have a Justice Minister who fully and wholly understands the struggles of our marginalized and our racialized communities. And I would urge the Minister to continue to take a hardline position against all of the hate-motivated attacks against those individuals in our population that are particularly at risk. And I say that, Madam Chair, because I represent an incredibly diverse community, and I hear the struggles and the challenges of racialized groups on a daily basis. To the Minister, the basis of an effective democratic society, in my view, and in my past experience as a lawyer and in my practice, has been the effectiveness of our legal system. Law and order is, in my mind, a basic and fundamental component of a well-functioning society. And in fact, I think we as Canadians are incredibly fortunate because we do have a society that is the envy of the entire world. And I think law and order forms a very essential component when it comes to that. With that said, though, Minister, I had the opportunity, I should say, to review the materials. And one of the first things that I wanted to bring to the Minister's attention, Madam Chair, is found in the estimates on page 155. Now, it's my understanding that under line item 3.3, which is referred to as law reform in the estimates, the Alberta Law Reform Institute receives an annual grant from this government to review legislation, to provide advice, to ensure that the laws remain up to date. I did not know that, and I'll be frank. I think that though the institute is well known and well regarded within the legal community, their relationship with the government to Albertans may not be well understood. How long, to the Minister, how long has the Alberta Law Reform Institute received this grant for? What is the volume or the production of research and recommendations that this government receives on an annual basis? And what does the ministry use the information for, with specific reference to what type of benefits are being received from this institute's research?
Thank you, Mr. Amory. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And MLA Emery, let me thank you first for your work in making sure that we get the Police Act review right. And I've had multiple conversations with you, and you know that we are committed in making sure that we have a 21st Century Police Act that reflects today's Alberta. I have often said that the promise of our province, again, is that we are a people that comes from a different, multicultural, multiracial, a broad professional background. And that the promise of our province is that when you come here in this province, you will achieve your full potential regardless of who you are. And we are committed in building a society that reflects that allows people to achieve their full potential. So thank you for your help in that particular work. The Alberta Law Reform Institute is an important institute that was established in 1967 through an agreement between the government of Alberta, through my office, the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General, the University of Alberta, and the Law Society of Alberta. It is a tripartite agreement that has been renewed every 5 years since that time. The latest agreement was put in place in 2017, whereby money has been provided annually. This has ranged from $200,000 to $500,000 in grant money per year from Justice and Solicitor General. In terms of some of the work that the Alberta Law Reform Institute have done, in 2019-2020, for example, 45 references to the Alberta Law Reform Institute work in court decisions, journal articles, and blogs. Some of the projects that they have undertaken include adverse possession, standing in the place of a parent, police records checks, regulating legal services, the Dower Act, Personal Property Security Act, informal public appeals, Family Property Act. Alberta's new Family Property Act came into force January 1, 2020. So the Institute have got a broad mandate to make sure that they are constantly looking at our laws to make sure that they are up to date, and where they find that there are needs for reviews or amendment and or updating of pieces of legislation, they make those recommendations to my department. And so far, I am thankful for the work that the Institute does on behalf of our legal community and Albertans. Thank you, Emery.
Thank you, Minister, and to Mr. Amory.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for that response. The Minister went into a detailed discussion earlier this evening with respect to questions from Member Sabir in relation to the Jordan decision, and some stats were provided, Madam Chair, earlier this evening, which were staggering in my view, but certainly for those who don't know, the Jordan decision set timelines for a province or a prosecutor to try a case for an accused in order that an accused does not experience unnecessary delay with respect to charges alleged against that individual. Now, having said that, the Minister earlier mentioned that there were some 300 plus challenges under the Jordan rule, and 9 of those are currently ongoing, with the majority of them, or a large number of them, thankfully being dismissed. Having said that, one of the concerns is that this Jordan rule has placed a significant weight on our Crown prosecutors, in that they are forced to move a case as quickly as possible in order that a Jordan challenge does not arise, and ultimately the risk that an accused individual be set free on what I would characterize in many cases as a technicality. Having said that, I note, Minister, that on page 155 of the estimates, and in particular line item number 4, the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service, has received a decrease in funding. Now, as I've alluded to, and as it's no secret to any member of this committee, in my previous life, I was a lawyer and I worked very closely with many Crown prosecutors, and I understand that the role is incredibly thankless and involves a lot of hours and very little support. One of the concerns that I have is that there is a decrease in funding when all of the Crown prosecutors I've been able to speak to have been looking forward to some help from within this ministry in order to continue the great work that they're doing. Can you, Minister, explain the decrease in funding and whether this has stemmed from any savings in other areas, or is there any justification for this that you can elaborate on? And secondly, another question for you. One of the primary complaints of our Crown prosecutors is that the staffing issues within their offices make their job very difficult, meaning that without adequate staffing, as you know, it's very difficult to get things done because support staff are such an essential part of a Crown prosecutor's job. Can you elaborate a little bit, please, for this committee and for those watching on the staffing levels at the Crown Prosecutor's Office? And perhaps explain to all of us, myself included, what some of the underlying issues or challenges your department is facing with respect to retention and recruitment of Crown prosecutors or capable Crown prosecutors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amory. I would just remind you to make sure that you are directing your questions through the chair and not directly to the minister. And Minister Madu, for you to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, MLA Emery, for your question. So obviously, the Crown Prosecution Service does important work on behalf of our province, and I think we wouldn't have an effective justice system without the work that that particular office does. That said, there has been pressure with staffing the Crown Prosecution Office, and I am, as Justice Minister, working with my department, doing everything we can to make sure that we relieve the pressure on that department. So work continues to fill existing Crown Prosecutor vacancies. We have ongoing job competitions, and we are increasing the size of our articling program to ultimately grow the ranks of the Crown Prosecution Service. Hiring more Crown prosecutors is essential to addressing increasing caseload and ensuring that viable criminal cases can proceed. Work continues to address concerns that have led to issues with recruitment and retention of prosecutors. Our government also increased the number of articling students in Justice and Solicitor General to help recruit lawyers to ultimately work as Crown prosecutor. That number increases to 20 in 2021. Let me also say this, Madam Chair, that as of the end of February 2021, the total number of occupied trial Crown prosecutor positions in the province is 329, and the number of vacant positions is 31. This is an improvement in occupied positions over 2019 and 2020, when we had 308 occupied positions. As I said before, Madam Chair, work continues to fill existing Crown prosecutor vacancies. And as you know, this government committed hiring 50 additional Crown prosecutors, and we are on track to fulfilling that mandate.
And to Mr. Amory.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair, and to the Minister for that response. And through you once again to the Minister, I've had the opportunity to look through the estimate documents, and I don't see, as we've talked a little bit about the Police Act review, and this is really an important thing for me and for, I think, many Albertans, but I don't see a specific line item here with respect to the Police Act review. And this is one of the objectives identified on page 73 of the business plan. In addition to pointing out what line item this might fall under within the estimates, through you, Madam Chair, could the Minister please walk us through the process of this review and explain what some of the costs are likely to be, and what some of the costs have been that have been incurred so far, I should say. Are there any estimates of the cost to implement any likely recommendations? Has that been contemplated by these figures that you have provided before us? And does it contemplate for things like we see in other jurisdictions, for example, the use of body cams, which might provide us with additional insight on police encounters, or things like additional training for police officers, de-escalation training and the like. Does the Minister have a specific area that he might point us out to, Madam Chair, on how the Police Act review will be funded and or the recommendations implemented? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, MLA Emery, again for for that question. The Police Act review is a significant undertaking that will shape the relationship between police and our citizens for decades to come. The outcome of this review will be the first major update of this legislation since it was introduced in 1988. We need an effective complaint process that offers citizens a fast, effective, and independent process to bring forward concerns about police misconduct. We need a modern governance framework that provides communities with input into establishing police priorities and ensures effective oversight of how police undertake their duties. We need to improve the experience of Indigenous peoples with law enforcement and strengthen the relationship between Indigenous communities and the police. We need to improve the public trust in police through collaboration between police, government, and community groups to co-determine solutions to issues. Between mid-March and April of 2021, we will be meeting with stakeholders that represent Alberta's diverse communities to ensure changes proposed will be responsive to the concerns they raise. These meetings will all be done virtually to minimize cost. And as I said, in order to make sure that we have capacity within as well as outside, that is why I appointed a special advisor on the Police Act review to help the work of the department to make sure that we have taken into considerations the broad voices and views of the members of our community. The costs associated with the Police Act review engagement to date have been absorbed within our program. Once the review is complete, I will be able to comment on the cost of different policy items that Cabinet considers. But that said, I think part of the police transition, the Provincial Police Transition Study, part of the work that they are doing is to also, advise, provide recommendations on what it would mean to have a 21st century police services that is focused on community policing. So many of the items you touch on, Emily, will be the subject matter of review and will be contained in the report that I expect from the police transition study. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And just before we go on to the next set, I do note that there's a few minutes. It's starting to get exceptionally hot in this room. So if anyone wants to take their coats off, please do so. And if anyone needs fresh water, we will be going to a break after the next round of questions from the opposition. And I see Mr. Rutherford.
Chair, just a time check.
1 minute, 35 seconds.
Okay, well, thank you, Minister, for being with us today and for your staff as well. I'll ask this question rather quickly. Hopefully we can get through it. Estimates page 155 under line item 3. There is a reference to a $7.5 million reduction associated with the service delivery charge for civil law. That would be line item 3.1, I believe. Can you please explain what the change is and how it is generating that reduction, please?
Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. And just a reminder to have the questions be directed through the chair and to Minister Madu for a response.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Emily Rutherford, for your question. Since 2019-2020 fiscal year, the Legal Services Division has been advancing a strategy which combines manpower reductions with service innovation and a focus on providing those services of greatest value to our client. We work with our clients to assess the nature of the services they require and ensure their work requires the specialized skills, knowledge, or experience of a lawyer. If the request does not require specialized legal skill or is of low priority or risk, we will assist our client in developing capacity to manage the matter through activities such as developing templates, tip sheet, flow charts, and other resources. Legal Services Division uses internal processes to rigorously monitor new and ongoing service requests and assign resources to items of high priority to our client. We communicate with our client to understand their needs and priorities. We are working with our client to establish the best practices on when and how to utilize legal services. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the government member's first block of questions. Now we move to 5-minute blocks of questions from the official opposition, followed by 5 minutes of response from the minister. As mentioned, members are asked to advise the chair at the beginning of their rotation if they wish to combine their time with the minister's time. And please remember that discussion should flow through the chair at all times, regardless as to whether or not speaking time is combined. Ms. Ganley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister, I'd like to thank both himself and his staff for being here this evening. And Madam Chair, if it's agreeable to the Minister, I would like to combine the time.
Minister?
That's okay with me, Madam Chair.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. I'm going to, through the chair to you, Minister, I'm going to begin my questioning with respect to revenue. So I'm now on page 161 of the main estimates. And under revenue, I have a couple of questions. So the first relates to the line which is entitled Fines and Penalties. It was 198 million actual in 1920. In 2020-2021, say that 5 times fast, it was projected to be 267 million, but only came out to 239 million, and is now projected in estimate of 21-22 to be 262 million roughly. So I'm omitting the hundreds of thousands there. Now, my understanding is, so the jump which was projected initially in budget to occur occurs as a result of the province taking a greater share of those fine revenues, so a sort of larger percentage, and that the drop occurs as a result of sort of a lower number of tickets having been issued because basically of the pandemic. And then that you're expecting it to recover almost to sort of pre-pandemic levels in 21-22. Could you maybe confirm whether those assumptions are correct, or let me know sort of why we see that drop and then that increase again?
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to defer that question to the Senior Financial Officer of my department, Brad. Brad, please go to the podium and introduce yourself.
Good evening, Brad Wells, Senior Finance Officer. Yes, your assumption is correct. The drop in the fines and penalties revenue from 2021 to 21-22 is reflective of what we're seeing in the current environment. Fine penalties are down, and the assumption is that's related to COVID and the reduced traffic. We do anticipate that rebounding once the pandemic is over, and that's why we see the rebound of the estimated revenues in 22, 23, 23, 24.
Thank you, and Ms. Ganley.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wells. So the other question I had with respect to revenue, again, I'm on page 161. I'm looking at other revenue. So other revenue is at 22 million in 1920, 42 million was budgeted to 42 million in 20/21, and is now estimated at 51 million in 21-22. Now, it's my recollection from my conversations with the minister's predecessor last year that at least part of that increase was due to, so the way the rural crime strategy, the current rural crime strategy works is that money is taken in from municipalities, it comes in under this other revenue and then goes out through the PPSA. It is my understanding from my conversations with the minister's predecessor that the anticipation was that about $15 million would come in 15 million additional dollars would come in 1920, 30 million in 20/21, and the additional 15 million was for 2021, and then it would be up to $30 million this year. So what I'm trying to get about in a slightly roundabout way here is is there roughly that expected $30 million coming in from the small urbans and rural municipalities, and is that coming in under that line, other revenue?
Thank you, and to the Minister.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. What I can, tell the MLA Gunley is this. The 2021-2022 estimate is $51.5 million. That is an $8.8 million or 21% increase to 2020-2021 budget. And all of that will be broken down as follows. $8.8 million net increase comprised of 11.2% increase for police funded model due to the agreement reached to increase cost recovery charges from 10% to 15% in frontline policing needs for municipalities. $1.4 million increase projected in other miscellaneous revenues, primarily for unclaimed amount, court trust funds, the Maintenance Enforcement Program, the PPSA, Edmonton Airport Authority recoveries, and Sheriff Civil Enforcement offset by, now there will be offset by $2.6 million decrease due to a one-time funding provided in 2020-2021 for the replacement of the legacy accounting system transferred from the OPGT Common Fund to General Revenue Fund, and $1.2 million decrease to reflect the reduced bail forfeiture amount. Now, with respect to 2021-2022 estimate is $51.8 million, $8.7 million or 20% increase over 2020-2021 forecast, and that will be as follows. For this year, 2021-2022, the cost recovery will be 15%, and we can anticipate collecting $33.7 million in revenue. This will fund 97 new positions in the RCMP detachment and specialized crime unit reductions. In 2022-2023, the cost recovery will be 20% and 30% thereafter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister, to Ms. Ganley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister, thank you for that. I did have another question, sort of also located kind of on this page and on others. So again, I'm on 161, and I'm just looking at, oh, you know what? I'll ask that on another page. So I am turning now to page 155 of the main estimates, and I'm looking to line 6.5, that's contract policing and oversight. It is my understanding that that line represents the PPSA, so that's what the province is paying, or now the province with municipal flow-through funding is paying to the RCMP for the contract policing for the small, the under 5,000s and the rurals. And I see that there is an increase in that line of roughly just a little less than $10 million. Is that correct?
The Minister.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. That would be correct. But let me, in a nutshell, that would be correct, MLA Gunley.
Thank you. To Ms. Ganley.
Yes, thank you very much. So I have a few other questions. So one relates specifically to, and I guess my apologies, I did want to say on page 161, so I'll turn back there. The Victims of Crime and Public Safety Fund. And we can see it was roughly $43 million in 1920, up to $60 million budgeted for this year, which has passed, and $62 million in estimates for the upcoming year. My conversations with the minister's predecessor indicated that out of that Victims of Crime and Public Safety Fund, so relative to like when the mandate was expanded last year, that there was $10 million that was going to alert, $4 million that was going to drug treatment court, $5 million was going to prosecution's services, and $6.6 million was going to the sheriffs for rapid force. And I'm just wondering whether those numbers are projected to be the same for 21, 22.
Thank you, and we have 9 seconds, Minister.
So, so here's what I would say. For 21-22, the drug treatment court would have, I believe that would be $3 million. But you know,
Minister, perhaps we can get to this after the break at a next rotation. And with that, the time is 8:50. So I will ask that we all return at 8:56 promptly. to the United Conservative Caucus, and I believe we have Miss Lovely.
Thank you, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, do we have Mr. Rutherford? Was I mistaken?
Yeah, I just have one question, Chair, if I could.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that on page 155 of the estimates, in line item 5.4, Public Guardian and Trustee Services, which has taken a decrease in its budget. Minister, can you explain what this line item is and the rationale behind the decrease? And then also, it is my understanding that under this line item, there is a potential or a replacement of the legacy trust accounting system. And I was wondering if you could detail any challenges in setting up this new system. Is the system fully implemented? And what is the impact of this system on service delivery as well? Thank you.
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, MLA Rutherford, for that question. The decrease from 2020-2021 budget is largely due to funding of $2.6 million that was provided in last year's budget for the replacement of the legacy trust accounting system. That project is still underway, but you will see in budget 2021-2022 that the amount of $4.5 million is allotted from capital located in line 5.4 under the capital investment vote by program. Your question is asked in that there have been challenges with this project due to a myriad of factors, including unsuccessful vendor submissions and insufficient appreciation of available industry solutions. At the core of this previous unsuccessful attempt was the fact that the OPGT was attempting to manage the transformation solely within OPGT. In contrast, the OPGT-IS, which is the information system, project now has a robust governance structure with steering committee members from 2 divisions in Justice and Solicitor General, 2 parts of Service Alberta, and informed by legal, procurement, and IT experts. And the OPGT is now on a solid pathway to project completion, a pathway that has lies Office of the Auditor General IT project health check guidelines. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister, to Miss Lovely.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we hosted a very well-attended town hall right in Camrose, where the discussion focused on rural crime. Members of the community brought forward concerns around repeat offenders and emphasized that it was generally the same individuals committing crime on a regular basis. Key Objective 1.1 on page 73 of your business plan states that you will continue to work with policing partners and municipal leaders to address drivers of crime, such as establishing crime reduction units in rural Alberta. Outcome 3 on page 74 of that same document is ensuring Albertans are supported in their interactions with the justice system. So, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, can you please outline how these objectives in your business plan address the concerns of my constituents and will help protect our communities from repeat offenders?
Thank you, to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your question. So, the Ministry is working with policing partners and stakeholders to ensure all Albertans feel safe, secure, and protected in their communities. Government efforts, include commitment of up to $10 million each fiscal year to improve law enforcement rural crime response capability by increasing RCMP resources and creating the Rural Alberta Provincial Integrated Defense Response, which will allow the provincial peace officers to better respond and assist RCMP and other police services in rural Alberta. And that will include Camrose, MLA Lovely, commitment of up to $43.7 million to deal with and investigate child pornography, gang violence, drug trafficking, stalking, and domestic violence, primarily through the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team. We will continue to work with our partners and use evidence-based principles to assess the risk of those involved with community corrections through sustainment of effective practices in community policing. But let me also say this, Emily Lovely, you raise a very important point, which is, the persistent issue of rural crime in our province. And as you know, this government has, made a historical commitment in working with our municipal partners to make sure that we have boots on the ground and that the rural Albertans get the services that they need, that we decrease the gap in response time. I believe that every Albertan, regardless of where they live, should be able to call the police, and the police should be able to respond within reason. All of that particular work is underway, and I am confident that we would eventually, tackle successfully this perennial and persistent issue of rural crime. Thank you, Emily Lovely.
Thank you, and to MLA Lovely.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, at this same town hall, some of my constituents expressed concern regarding communication between Camrose City Police and the RCMP. On page 73 of the business plan, under Key Objective 1.3, reviewing the delivery of policing services, are you planning on looking at the coordination and communication of the RCMP with local police forces? If so, what steps is your ministry planning to take to help improve communication between the two? And if I might add, under the same objective, will part of your review on the feasibility of the Provincial Police Service consider how many former RCMP and city policing jurisdictions interact? If so, if we do proceed with the Provincial Police Service, do you have any indication whether jurisdictions like the Camrose City Police Force and the former RCMP will be amalgamated?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to Emily Lovely for that question. At the end of the day, I think it's important that we focus our concept of policing on community policing. That is what it comes down to. I want to make sure that we have a provincial police service that is responsive to the needs on the ground, the realities that our fellow citizens get to encounter on a daily basis. And whilst I can't speak to the outcome of that particular study by the consultant that we have hired, I am looking forward to that particular report, and the issues that you raise as the issues that we have tasked the consultant to look at in terms of how a potential police service is going to be put in place. I have said it, at the end of the day, it comes down to community policing. We have to make sure that our citizens who live in any part of our province get to feel the benefit and the presence of law enforcement. And I am really looking forward to what model that the consultant is going to come forward with. Obviously, I have enormous respect to the RCMP, and they are a great Canadian institution, but this is not about the RCMP. It's not about that institution. It's about the safety of our people. And the study will take a look at all kinds of models out there. And whilst I can, second guess what they will come back with, I am looking forward to that particular report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and to Ms. Lovely.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. I just want to mention that particular meeting, we filled the ballroom. It was standing room only, and people drove for an hour to get there, some of them. It was very well attended, and I'm hoping that once things settle down a bit with COVID and we're able to gather again, that, Minister, you'll be able to join me in Camrose and we can do part 2 of that session. I think the community would be really thrilled to have you there. So that leads me to my question. Members of my community have advised that individuals who commit a crime because they are not enough, pardon me, I just need a little sip of water. Members of my community have advised that individuals who commit a crime because there are not enough judges and the legal process times out. Outcome 2, identified on page 73, is ensuring that Alberta's justice system is fair and effective. What is being done under this outcome to ensure that due process is being followed and that justice is being served with a reasonable time frame?
Thank you. And to the Minister, you have 17 seconds for a reply.
Great question, Madam Chair and Emily Lovely. I would have loved to, have all the time in the world to respond to that particular question. But let me say this, that, we are doing everything we can within our powers to make sure that, we ensure justice is done when we see crimes being committed against our people and against our communities.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we move on to the next block and Ms. Ganley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And through you to the Minister, I'll just reframe my questions from the last time to be slightly more succinct. I trust you'll remember the page references. So basically what I'm asking about is with respect to the Victims of Crime Fund, how much, and this is for the estimates under consideration here, so 20/21, 21-22, how much of that Victims of Crime Fund do you expect to go to alert? How much do you expect to go to rapid, and how much do you expect to go to the Crown Prosecution Service?
To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Emily Ganley, for your question. So we have all kinds of initiatives under the Public Safety Division. For Drug Treatment Court, for 2021-2022, it will be $3 million. For Alert, it will be $15 million. For Rapid Response, which is the Sheriff Branch, it will be $10 million. And for Crown Prosecution Service, it will be $10 million for 2021-2022.
Thank you. And to the Ms. Ganley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister, thank you for that response. So now turning once again to the main estimates, I'm just turning back here to Contract Policing and Oversight on line 6.5. And in your response to a previous question about other revenue, you had indicated that 15% or roughly $33.7 million would be coming in from municipalities directed towards policing. And so what I'm seeing is that for that same time period, so the change from actual in 1920 to the estimate in 21-22, is that there is a change of roughly $23.5 million increase. So my question is just, why is there $33.5 million coming in from municipalities, but only $23.5 million additional going to the RCMP to pay for police? Thanks.
To the Minister.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, for the budget change for 2021-2022 are as follows: $9.4 million increase due to $11 million increase for the police funding model, $3.6 million for reallocation of the BCA contract from Element 6.1 program support to Element 6.5 contract policing and policing oversight, and $0.1 million increase for Edmonton Airport policing services. Now, again, the change from budget 2029-2020 actuals, $23.4 million net increase due to $26.6 million increase for the police funding model and $3.6 million for the reallocation. All of this will be offset by a decrease of $5.8 million for the provincial policing operating and maintenance adjustments and $1 million for the biology casework analysis. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And to Ms. Ganley.
Thank you very much. Sorry. I don't have quite as much information in here. Would you mind just running over just that last set of numbers again when you broke down the $23.4 million? You said, I'll just let you read it again. Sorry. Thank you.
Minister? Oh, sorry.
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Brad Wells of my department to run through those numbers.
Good evening, Brad Wells, Senior Finance Officer. Just go over the numbers on the police funding model. So for 2021, the net revenue generated from the model was anticipated to be 15.4 million, and that's increasing to 26.6 million in 2021-22. So the jump from 15 to 26 is approximately $11.2 million, which the minister spoke to, and also included in the change from the 279 to the 289 from budget 2021 to 21-22 is a 3.6 million for the biological case analysis agreement and $100,000 for the Edmonton Airport policing services. That's offset by decreases of $4.5 million for provincial police operating and maintenance adjustments, and also a decrease from past years for the biological case analysis agreement of $1 million. So there's a net change there of $9.4 million, even though the police funding model portion equates to $11.2 million.
Thank you. And to Ms. Ganley?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That was helpful. Sorry. With respect to the Victims of Crime Fund, my apologies for sort of jumping around a little bit here, and my apologies, Madam Chair. I did let a U slip through in there. That was my fault. So with respect to the Victims of Crime Fund, the previous minister had indicated that he expected to save about $7 million from the victims' financial benefits last year. Do you anticipate saving $7 million again this year, or has that number grown?
And to the minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to defer that question to the Senior Associate Deputy, ADM for my department, Bill Sweeney. Bill, please.
Senior Assistant Deputy Minister Bill Sweeney from the Public Security Division. The answer to that question is very difficult to provide at this stage. As the minister said earlier, we are reviewing the financial benefits program. There's an interim program in place. Recommendations will go to the minister for consideration later this year. Once those recommendations are assessed, we'd be in a better position to make a determination on the actual cost for next year.
Thank you. And to Ms. Ganley.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney. So one of the additional questions that I had, and I'm looking now with respect to, again, the estimates, I'm on page 155. I'm looking under item 4 in total, which is the Crown Prosecution Service. It's gone down somewhat, so about $2 million last year and another just over $2 this year. Now, obviously, that's somewhat offset by the fact that you've gone from $5 million coming from the Victims of Crime Fund to $10 million coming from the Victims of Crime Fund. Initial projections on that promise of 50 million, on that promise of 50 prosecutors. So this was from budget 1920, were 105 million in 1920, 109 million in 2021, and then 114 million this year. So it looks like you're managing to achieve a little bit of savings relative to what would have been projected to have the number of prosecutors in place that you need to get the 50 by the end of the term. And I think that 50 is probably about right. We added 70, I think, over the course of 4 years. So I think that seems like a very reasonable number to me. So I'm just wondering, you said that you're still planning to hire those 50 additional prosecutors. I'm just wondering how you're expecting to save those extra couple $1 million, whether there'll be expected changes to compensation. Oh, never mind.
We can get to that at the next block. And with that, we move back to the Government Caucus, and I believe Ms. Glasgow. You're muted.
Yes, I am. Sorry, technology is not my thing. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for your time today, and also for being willing to share time with us so that we can get some answers for our constituents. So, as you know, Minister, I have recently chaired the Alberta Firearms Advisory Committee, and this was in conjunction with several members from the firearms community, including some amazing people from across the province and your own department. I have to say that anytime I can, I'm going to give props to Peter and, pardon me, the incredible team at Justice and Solicitor General for the work that they've done to support me and Albertans in making sure that we're listening to Albertans on the issues that affect them most, and especially the issues of firearms. So we suggested to the Ministry of Justice, we sent a formal recommendation that the Chief Firearms Officer should be appointed in the province of Alberta. And I know that your office, or that the Ministry of Justice has taken to set up an office for the Chief Provincial Firearms Officer. Can you highlight how Budget 2021-2022 protects public safety while respecting law-abiding gun owners, and what line item the new Chief Provincial Firearms Officer will fall under?
Thank you, Ms. Glasgow, and now to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Glasgow, for that question. But also, let me thank you for your important work in chairing that important committee that has made our work in making sure that we appoint the Chief Provincial Firearms Officer possible. So through you, please extend my thanks to members of your committee for good work. You are correct. Alberta will appoint a Chief Provincial Firearms Officer this spring to help stand up for the province's law-abiding firearms owners. A provincially appointed Chief Firearms Officer is a fair deal panel recommendation that will better reflect Albertans' priorities and to be more closely aligned with the province's law-abiding firearms culture. The Chief Provincial Firearms Officer will collaborate with partners to help keep our communities safe and put criminals where they belong, behind bars. The new officer's work will also help free up the courts to deal with more serious matters. The Chief Provincial Firearms Officer is not included in Budget 2021, but will be part of the Q1 update. The CPFO will take over from the federal government in August 2021. Let me also say that the Chief Firearms Officer's budget will be all under line item 6.4, Law Enforcement Standard and Audit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And to Ms. Glasgow.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's great for clarification's sake. So I'm going to switch veins a little bit, but still talking about protecting citizens. In one case, we're talking about law-abiding firearms owners, but in this vein, I want to touch on some of the most vulnerable in our society, those who are victims and survivors of human trafficking. We know that this is a disgusting and dehumanizing crime that violates a person's most basic human rights and dignity. It's predatory, it's malicious, and it has absolutely no place in Alberta. Often victims of this crime are members of very vulnerable communities, and we also must give support to survivors. I was pleased to hear that the Human Trafficking Task Force was hearing about from stakeholders and strategizing how to eliminate human trafficking in our province. This also is a crime we know that particularly impacts Indigenous women and girls in the province and in the country as well. So this aligns with key objective 1.2 on page 73 of your business plan, to collaborate with partners to protect vulnerable Albertans, including those at risk of human trafficking. So, Minister, and through you, Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if the Minister could please provide an update on the key objective and point out what line item the Human Trafficking Task Force falls under, and maybe provide an update to Albertans about what exactly is going on with that.
Thank you, Ms. Glasgow. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, Ms. Glasgow, for that question. We established an Alberta Human Trafficking Task Force with a mandate to provide recommendations to help government implement the 9-point action plan. The task force is expected to submit their recommendations to government in the spring. To date, the task force has heard from over 70 individuals who are representative of people with lived experience and experts in combating human trafficking. The task force recognizes that any recommendations to government must be informed by those with lived experience. We established an internal government working group led by Justice and Solicitor General and with representation from 9 ministries to support the task force and be in a position to analyze the task force recommendations when received, and action recommendations subsequently approved by Cabinet. While the task force is active, my department continues to be the key liaison and secretariat to the task force for all needs and requests for information and administrative functions. A 2021 Cabinet date is being considered to review and decide on which task force recommendations to approve. Now, the Human Trafficking Task Force falls under line item 6.1, program support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, and to Ms. Glasgow.
Can I please get a time check, Madam Chair?
3 minutes, 42 seconds.
Okay, great. So, Minister, there seems to be a narrative that I think is perpetuated on the the horrible places such as Twitter, that you are defunding police departments. We know that the only people who want to defund the police are the left-wing activists who are sitting on Twitter, but for some reason, your ministry is accused of this often. Yet I see on page 155 under line item 6.7 that policing assistance to municipalities is being held steady. That's a great thing, as many in rural communities we know, of course, are faced with higher rates of crime. We know that these violent crimes have gone up, and it's quite concerning. So, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I was wondering if the Minister would be able to talk a little bit more in depth about this line item. Pardon me, and how this money is being used. And if the Minister can also explain why the decision was made to increase funding and what concrete deliverables Albertans can expect to see for their investments.
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A great question again from Ms. Glasgow. Let me be clear. We are increasing the total enforcement funding this year. Madam Chair, to be clear, in budget 2021, we have increased that funding to $549.5 million. That is more than $500 million in law enforcement. Compare that again to budget 2020, $543.2 million. So this has been an increase from budget 2020 because, Madam Chair, we believe that this now is not the time to begin to play politics with the law enforcement budget. And there can never be a good time, in fact, to do that because, as I've always said, the men and women who wear the uniform do important work to keep us safe at home and our community safe. In fact, when many of us are fast asleep at night, those men and women patrol our streets to ensure that we get to enjoy the peace and quiet we've been accustomed to as a province. In 2020-2021, Madam Chair, we provided $89.8 million in combined policing grant to municipalities with more than 5,000 population who are responsible for providing their own policing services. Again, Madam Chair, we have not removed a penny from the funding that we provide to municipalities, to help them, provide police services to their various municipalities. There are two set of grants that we provide to municipalities: the Municipal Police Assistant Grant to 54 municipalities and the Police Officer Grant to 50 municipalities. All of those funding have been maintained at their level. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And Ms. Glasgow.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that response. I just wanted to say that I am eternally grateful to all of the men and women in uniform in Brooks, Medicine Hat, and in Alberta in general. We have, I've spent a lot of time with the Redcliffe RCMP as well as the Brooks RCMP and Medicine Hat Police Service, talking about issues such as mental health, rural crime, and such. And I know that they are all very dedicated individuals who are there to support constituents when they need them most. So I just wanted to take time, while many of us are thinking that this is a late night, they're working even late.
Thank you, Ms. Glasgow. And with that, we go back to the official opposition and Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you to the Minister, page 160, victim of crime and public safety funds at $62.8 million. And simple question through you to Minister is that how much of that $62.8 million goes to victim of crime benefits specifically?
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Madam Chair, I am going to let Brad Wells of my department speak to that matter.
Good evening, Brad Wells, Senior Finance Officer. So for 21-22 in the estimates for financial benefits, specifically in Victims of Crime Public Safety Initiative Fund, there's $5 million, just over $5 million.
Thank you, and back to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you. I will move on to estimates 155 in number 4 Alberta Crown Prosecution Services. So in business plan, there are that you're hiring, ministry will be hiring 50 new prosecutors, 20 this year, 20 next, and 10 after. Through you, Madam Chair, that 50 Crown prosecutors were announced in 2019 as well. Just wanted Minister to confirm that if they are same Crown prosecutors or that's a new one.
Thank you, Mr. Sabir. Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we made a commitment to hire 50 new prosecutors, and we are on track to fulfilling that. In fact, we plan to hire 20 new trial crown prosecutors for the 2021-2022 year. The total number of occupied trial crown prosecutor positions as of February 28, 2021 in the province is 329, and the number of vacant positions is 31. This is an improvement in occupied positions over 2019-2020, when we had 308 occupied positions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sabir.
To you, Madam Chair, what's the cost of hiring 20 prosecutors?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if I can get Mr. Sabir to repeat that question, please.
To you, Madam Chair, what's the cost of hiring 20 prosecutors?
Minister?
Madam Chair, I am going to let Brad from my department deal with that particular question.
Good evening, Brad Wells, Senior Finance Officer. So we use for costing purposes, we use an average of about $200,000 per Crown prosecutor. So if you're talking 20 Crown prosecutors, you're around $4 million.
Thank you. Mr. Sabir.
To you, Madam Chair, to Minister, that Crown Prosecution Service budget line is cut by $3 million. So to the Minister, through you, that how we going to fund this $4 million and which line item it will be. 4.2, I take.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Alberta Crown Prosecution Services budget is $98.6 million, or 8% of the department's total voted operating budget of $1.3 billion. So $1,275.6 million. The budget provides for $92.6 million, or 94% of the operating budget is for salaries. $6 million, or 6% of the operating budget, is for supplies and services. And there are 773 full-time equivalencies. But from 2020-2021, the budget and forecast is as follows: $2.8 million net decrease, which comprised of $2.7 million reduction to manpower for ministry internal reallocations, and due to restructuring with appeals and regulatory prosecution branch, $2.5 million in reduction to manpower for the government's labor mandate adjustment. And this is also offset by $2 million increase to support Alberta Rural Crime Strategy, $0.4 million or $400,000 to increase to supply and services for hardware, equipment requirement to support the 20 new Crown prosecutor positions for 2021-2022.
Thank you, Minister.
So you, Madam Chair, just to clarify that, Minister, these numbers were under line item 4.
Minister?
Correct. But let me also say this, Madam Chair, that this does not include the $10 million for additional Crown prosecutors from the Victims of Crime and Public Safety Fund, which represents a $5 million increase from the budget of 2020-2021.
Minister, Mr. Spear?
Thank you to you, through you, Madam Chair. Just to confirm what I heard, that Crown prosecutors, the money for that will come from Victims of Crime Fund. Is that correct?
The Minister?
That would be correct. That would be Chair.
Mr. Spear?
Move to Justice Services. Through you, Madam Chair, there is an overall $8 million reduction here. And these are all important support. For instance, 5.2, that is maintenance support. So I understand COVID has caused many concerned financial hardships. So can you, through you, Madam Chair, to Minister, can Minister provide the caseload numbers for maintenance enforcement and whether it has gone up or down?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to defer that question to the ADM responsible for that particular area, Dave Peace.
Good evening, David Peace, Assistant Deputy Minister, Justice Services Division. The caseload in Family Support Order Services, which runs the maintenance enforcement program, has not changed significantly since last year. It runs close to 50,000 case files, and there's two parties in each one of those case files, so about 100,000 clients. What maintenance enforcement program has been doing over the last 2 years and will continue going forward is transitioning to a case management service delivery model, which allows much more holistic handling of the cases, understanding from a case officer to the clients the exact nature of what they're going through, COVID restrictions, for example, and what that does to their income levels, and allows them to manage those caseloads more effectively, which results in better quality service.
Thank you. Mr. Spear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to 5.4, Public Guardian and Trustee. I do know constituents who utilize these services, and I'm surprised to see cut in this category. I would have expected that with the potential client base growing, the need for services would increase. So through you to the Minister, again, what's the forecasted caseload for this public guardian and trustee office?
Thank you. To the Minister.
So again, Chair, I'm going to defer that question to David Peace of my department.
Again, Madam Chair, it's David. Sir Justice Services Division. For the public guardian and trustee, for the represented adults, so the people that have a public guardian, the caseloads for OPGT are 2,590. On the trustee side, it's 4,210. And clients that have both a public trustee and a public guardian, it's 1,665. The cuts that you see in that line item, as the Minister mentioned in his earlier remarks, reflect a change in the funding for the information management system transformation project that's underway. The year just ending, that was operating money that was being spent. And next year it's showing up as capital money due to the nature of the expenses that were forecast in the phase of the project renewal. So we're not actually changing the frontline service delivery.
Perfect, and that was right within the buzzer. And with that, we move back to the Government Caucus and Mr. Guthrie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to waste any time here. Like a jackrabbit, I'm just going to hop to it. Through the Chair, to the Minister, in the estimates on page 55, under the line item 6.9, Sheriff's Branch, there's a decrease showing from last year's budget. I think it's from around 91.8 million to 85.1 million. And as you know, the Safer Communities and Neighbors, or the SCAN unit, is out of the Sheriff's Department, which is funded through the Sheriff's Branch. And it helps to keep communities safe while dealing with properties that are being used illegally. So through the Chair, Minister, I was wondering how, if at all, this decrease in the budget would affect funding to SCAN.
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to MLA Guthrie for that question. In December 2007, the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act was established in response to this legislation in early 2008. The Sheriff's Branch established SCAN investigative unit in Edmonton and Calgary. Currently, there are 10 investigator positions in North and 10 investigator positions in the South. Although both Calgary and Edmonton SCAN units currently have 10 investigator positions, each unit is carrying one vacancy. The Edmonton SCAN unit investigates complaints north of Red Deer, while the Calgary office investigates complaints in the southern part of the province, including Red Deer. The goal of the SCAN unit is to improve community safety by targeting and, if necessary, shutting down residential and commercial buildings regularly used for illegal activities. This includes activities such as producing, selling, or using illegal drugs, prostitution, solvent abuse, or the unlawful use and consumption of alcohol, gang activity, organized crime, and the exploitation of children. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And Mr. Guthrie?
Thank you, Minister. And through the Chair, further to the same item, Minister, could you address how SCAN has been operating over the last year, and in particular, whether their operations have been impeded by the pandemic? And has this led to a backlog, anything that might have to be dealt with in this upcoming fiscal year?
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Throughout the COVID period of this period, SCAN has seen an increase in investigations. This is likely because people are working from home and are more exposed to the activities occurring in and around their communities throughout the day. COVID has not impacted how investigations are conducted or concluded. SCAN continues to strive for success and serve Alberta community members who are empowered to take their communities back and restore them to peaceful enjoyable, and safe communities. Living near a property with constant drug activity is disruptive and traumatizing to the hard-working citizens throughout our province. This government will continue to work with SCAN and policing agencies to ensure that Albertans enjoy safe and secure communities. That programming is in place to best meet the challenges that lies ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Guthrie.
Thank you, Minister, and through the chair. Minister, on the same page, estimates page 155, this time though on item 2.1 under program support, I noticed there's a decrease from last year's budget, going from 16 million to just under 14 million. So can you explain the rationale behind this decrease? And in particular, did merchant fees for electronic payments play any kind of role in that change?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Program support service includes the back office and strategic management services to our cause, and Alberta State Court, Court Technology Services, and Alberta Review Board. The budget decrease of $2 million reflects my department's effort to realign resources to core frontline services and our government level mandate. This means greater efficiencies in our operations without changes to our frontline services. Madam Chair, it's important that I emphasize that these are as a consequence of us looking for efficiencies. This would not affect frontline services that Albertans rely on. Merchant fees, charges we receive when Albertans make court fee and fine payments electronically, the total approximately $3 million annually. The budget for merchant fees has not been altered, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Guthrie, for that question.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to cede the remainder of my time to MLA Amory.
All right. MLA Amory.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you once again to the Minister for his hard work this evening. Minister, the provincial courts are, they have essentially modified, as have all courts in our province, they've essentially modified their systems to deal with a post-COVID reality, and a lot of that includes things like online appearances and attendances. Almost all adjournments are taking place online, and quite frankly, from what I'm told from my colleagues, a lot of the processes are taking place virtually, and that means essentially less traffic in court, and in my view, potentially lesser resources are being utilized with respect to in-person appearances, and what you see now is members of the legal team, lawyers and self-reps are appearing online, oftentimes from places like their home, their offices, even places like the Devonian Gardens, essentially, which is a very, very nice place located right next to the courthouse, and as you know, or as you probably know, a beautiful place for foliage and growth there. I'm looking forward to seeing continued appearances in this manner, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to say about one particular area on page 155 of the estimates in line item 2.2, resolution services, and 2.4, the Provincial Court of Alberta. It seems to have taken substantial reductions from almost 7 million and 8 million respectively, I should say. And it seems to me that line item 2.2 may actually relate to key objective 3.2 and digital transformation. Minister, to the Minister, would the Minister please be able to explain the rationale behind these reductions and whether they are related, in fact, to these virtual appearances and a greater dependency on virtual attendances?
Thank you, Mr. Amory, and now to the Minister. Thank
you, Madam Chair, and MLA Emery, you are correct. 2.2 is related to key objective 3.2 and digital transformation. Resolution services budget changes reflect efficiencies to be achieved through automation and digitization, a realignment of resources to core frontline services and government labor mandates. Resolution Services administers programs that help members of the public resolve their legal matters. For instance, delivering information services and court forms assistance to the public related to their legal issues and concerns, and alternative dispute resolution services such as mediations. The department is currently assessing which initiatives to proceed with in order to meet Budget 2021 targets. Any changes to services will focus on supporting the justice system's core component and modernizing the services to make them more user-friendly and efficient through automation and digitization. The reduction to provincial court administration will be absorbed mainly through attrition. The Resolution and Court Administration Services has an attrition rate of just under 20%. The RCADs will focus on maintaining essential frontline positions and investing in technology to make processes more efficient. Let me also add this, Madam Chair. If we have learned anything from this pandemic, it is that it is important that we seize this moment, to innovate on how, how Albertans are able to access, the court. We learned that it is not in all cases, that lawyers or self-represented litigants need to go into the courthouse physically. So those are some of the things that we have learned that we have tried to implement in Budget 2021, 2022. And at someone...
Minister, and with that, on to Mr. Sabir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, a quick clarification question about Office of Public Guardian and Trustee. Is there any funding for Office of Public Trustee to help with dependent adults who don't qualify or don't have a public trustee? They would come through PDD and ISH. So it's just a clarification that there is funding for those Albertans.
Thank you. Minister?
Madam Chair, once again, I'm going to have the ADM responsible for that particular area, Dave Pace, to deal with that question.
David Peace, Assistant Deputy Minister, Justice Services Division. Madam Chair, could I just get the question repeated for me, please?
Mr. Sabir?
Sure. Is there any funding for Office of Public Trustee to help with dependent adults who do not qualify or don't have a public trustee? They are Albertans who would come from PDD and ISH.
In this budget document, there's no specific project that's oriented towards that. However, the Public Guardian and Trustee, Community and Social Services, Children's Services, all work together as a holistic approach towards clients, especially when there's complexities to those clients. And if there was somebody that needed a trustee or a guardian that couldn't rely on family members or friends to do that, then that's when the Public Guardian and Trustee would step in.
Thank you, and to you, Madam Chair. That's also, Minister, a clarification question. I was earlier listening to the Executive Council estimate, and Premier said that money for the referendums will be given to municipalities and its Justice Department, like for instance for equalization. I wasn't able to find the line item where that money is, so through you, Madam Chair, if Minister could please help us figure out where that money is.
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, if the government made a commitment to hold a referendum on equalization, and we've made a commitment to hold that later this year. What that means is the government is going to fund the cost to holding the referendum. The primary responsibility for conducting the referendum lies with municipal affairs. Whilst I can't speak on behalf of the Minister of Municipal Affairs, I can assure the member that my department and all of government work closely with the Minister of Municipal Affairs to make sure that the budgetary needs of holding the referendum is going to be there when we need it.
Thank you to you, Madam Chair. Line item 6 in the estimate, public security. There is approximately a 10-year cut over 2 years, and budget is going down for organized and serious crime, alert, for instance, in ACERT, not alert. The question I have is, what's the ACERT caseload looks like? Had it increased? And the related question is that recently Executive Director of ACERT, Susan Hudson, warned that ACERT is at a breaking point, and I quote, was taxed to the max and beyond capacity. And she said ACERT either needs more resources or the minister would need to reconsider ACERT mandate. So through you, the question I have is that we see a slight reduction. So can Minister confirm that if he is reconsidering ACERT mandate?
The Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, before I hand over this question to deal with to be dealt with to the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for public security, let me say that we have put forward a budget that provides record funding to law enforcement, more than $500 million. And I am confident that all of the agencies that works under the Public Security Division would have the budget that they needed to meet their mandate and deliver for Albertans. With that, Madam Chair, I would like the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Public Security to address the member's specific question.
It's Bill Sweeney, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Public Security Division. The budget appropriation reflects the current mandate for ACERT. The minister gave us explicit direction to, in the course of the Police Act review, to explore whether the mandate is the right mandate and to bring forward recommendations. And those recommendations would have budget implications. It's too premature for us to speculate on what that might be. It'd be public policy issues for the minister to consider.
Through you, Madam Chair, with respect to correction services, budget is cut by almost 25 million. It's forecasted at 286 for 2020-21, and 21-22 is 261. So we have seen outbreaks in all correction centers. Employees have been asked to come to work even if they were tested positive. So how this reduction will impact our correctional services, and also through you, if I can get the caseload number and how many people moved out of the prison because of the COVID-19. I just looking for two numbers through you.
Thank you, and to the Minister.
Madam Chair, let me make one correction, because I wouldn't want what the member said that is incorrect about my department requiring folks who have tested positive that works in our correctional facilities to come to work. That particular statement is false, and there's no iota of truth on that. That said, Madam Chair, we are focusing on the core services within the provincial correctional system to keep Albertans safe while working to reduce budget. We are determining the most suitable delivery of correctional services to eliminate duplication and to identify where savings could be made. Let me also say, with respect to the member-specific question, when a center experienced an outbreak, the following measures were instituted. Testing of all center correctional and Alberta Health Services staff, which is voluntary, twice daily symptom screening of inmates by staff, symptoms screening of staff before each shift, enhanced cleaning and disinfection, enhanced personal protective equipment for staff and inmates, continuous health teaching and mental health support for both inmates and staff, all non-urgent inmate movement temporarily suspended within the entire center, and in and out of the affected unit. In terms of the number that the member is looking for, I believe is, Dennis, would this be 1,349? 1,349.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Sabir?
Also, the last question, there was a 20 million reduction over 2 years in Sheriff Branch, which was supposed to do more work in Provincial Integrated Defense Force. And also there is a reduction in Youth Offender Community Correction Center. A program in Calgary was cut, and which lost 27 employees. Through you, if Minister would like to comment on those two.
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. As part of an internal reorganization, the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Branch joined the Alberta Sheriffs in April 2020, followed by the Fish and Wildlife Branch in October 2020. The integration of these enforcement areas into one service will result in a coordinated command, dispatch, records management, and a force multiplier for office assistance, saving taxpayers more money while creating stronger links in the safety-related services we provide to Albertans. With respect to the young offender center in Calgary, what we did there was to reassign the management of that particular work from the city of Calgary to the provincial government.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we move on to the government and Mr. Amory.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. I just want to quickly continue my questioning about the digital transformation. Would the Minister please walk us through what this digital transformation means for our Alberta law libraries, and whether such transformation will ultimately mean that users will be able to access these resources virtually from attractions like I had referenced earlier, Devonian Gardens, and other areas with beautiful scenery and hopefully a redundant exhibit if it ever becomes available here, and other attractions while maintaining social distancing.
Is that the new word?
Thank you. To the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I can see you guys are having fun down there. But thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Emery, for that question. I am going to turn that question over to the Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for that particular area, Mary MacDonald.
Mary MacDonald, Assistant Deputy Minister for Resolution and Court Administration Services. The Alberta Law Libraries are funded through kind of a joint venture between the Government of Alberta and the Law Society of Alberta and the Alberta Law Foundation. And in doing so, they provide services to Albertans throughout the province as the digitization of the courts and government in general occurs more and more. It allows more and more of those services to be centralized, and yet, as we all know, to be able to use technology to have Zoom.
I apologize for the interruption, but I must advise the committee that the time allotted for the consideration of the ministry's estimates has now concluded, and I would like to remind committee members that we're scheduled to meet next tomorrow morning, March 11th, 2021 at 9 a.m. to consider the estimates of children's services. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is now adjourned.